Hi, I'm Dr. Sandy Islands. A lot of people ask me, is that your real name? And I say, well, it's been my real name since 1985, and I was getting divorced, and it sort of bummed me out that all I had for my identity was my divorce papers. I had to change everything, and being somewhat of a feminist, I didn't really know why that was the case. Of course, it's not the case today. People take anybody's names. And so I just decided I'm not keeping his name or going back to my maiden name. I'm going to pick a name I like. And that's how I found it. Literally back then, there weren't really computers. So a friend of mine lent me her typewriter. We were both working at a college. And she said, take good care of islands in the stream. And she'd named her typewriter that. And I went, Sandy Islands. That's what I'm going to change my name to. Well, I'm a working psychotherapist. So pretty much my everyday life is I'm in my office and I see clients. I have my own private practice. And then when I'm done in the morning, I'll tend to do some writing, administrative work. I go swimming, I do Pilates, I walk, I needlepoint, and sort of keep it simple. So I got a bachelor's degree in speech pathology and audiology, and then they said, well, you really should get a master's degree or you're not going to be able to get a job. So interestingly, I wanted to change my major to journalism my sophomore year, and I let my parents talk me out of that. And I look back on that, some of the decisions I've made that I would do differently now, but then I got a master's degree in speech pathology. And it was very grueling, and licensing tests and a clinic, such that when I finished, I had master's plus 12 credits. And so my job, you got a pay raise if you had master's plus 15. So I went to the psychology department. I said, hey, can I take a psychology course? Because, I need these extra credits. And they said, oh no, you have to get a master's in psychology if you want to come into our department. So I literally lied and said, okay, I'll get a master's, with no intention to get one. And the course was a personal growth course. I'll never forget, it was Wayne Dyer's Your Erroneous Zones, his first book that he wrote, where it was about other people don't make you mad. They push your buttons and you respond, and it was the first looking at myself. And so once I took that course, and I really didn't like my job that much as a speech pathologist, I said, okay, because it's an area that wasn't focused on in speech problems and strokes and things like that. And also I realized I needed my own level of psychological understanding, and one of the requirements for that master's is you had to have counseling. So I got some free counseling, and then I ended up working as a supervisor in the same college in the speech pathology department, because now I was licensed. And all the while I'd always been writing and kind of missing, maybe not switching my major, and journaling and poetry, and I have gobs of all this unpublished writing. And then I went on to work I worked as a speech pathologist. I worked, in different jobs. And then I finally realized that I'm wired as a student. And so I had a novel that I'd been working on, and I thought, well, if I get another master's degree, by then I'd already gotten a PhD, but I knew that if I had deadlines and mentors and feedback and all that's required in a writing degree. So that's how I ended up writing the novel A Ripple in Time, because it was my master's thesis. Well, when in the master's degree, you had to pick a genre. So you had to pick children's, and I'd already written children's, and I didn't feel like I needed any help in that area, so that's why I picked the fiction. And Unfortunately, in 1986, I'm the oldest of three girls. My baby sister was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, which is a malignant brain tumor. She lived 18 months and passed away, and it was a life-changing event for our family. And after she passed away, I kind of thought, I just couldn't buy the unfairness of that happening. And so I went on this avid research study of life, death, life after death, near-death experiences, reading Kubler-Ross. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was one of the pioneers of kind of challenging our perception of death, that we're taught that that's the end. And if you look at some of the Buddhist teachings in reincarnation, and then I started having some spiritual experiences where I felt like I was actually having some contact with my sister, and nothing I was looking for, but things happened. And so I just opened my box of the five senses to include spirituality, and I was always on a spiritual search myself to understand what that energy in the universe is that's bigger than our mind and personality. And I've come to, and I talk to my clients about this, that I think we're a 4-cylinder car: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and cars run better when all cylinders are tuned up. And some people choose a religious path, but to find that energy, and then based on my experience of kind of believing that we all have a spirit within that lives on when this body passes away, and that spirit's always connected to that energy in the universe. And it's always downloading information and guidance for our highest good. So I just had to incorporate that in the story. So divine energy is what I'm calling the source. Some people call it God. You can call it the universe, Buddha. I always invite people to, when they're looking at, well, what is my spirituality, to maybe find a name for it. And they don't even have to think of it as prayer, but it can be just an energy in the universe that they're always connected to, and they want to enhance that connection, because our personality mind, that which comes with our body or our ego, tends to be the thing that creates suffering. And it also isn't the observer. So our higher consciousness, which is that spirit within connected to that divine source, divine energy, can be the observer. And that's the thing that can, when we're taking ourselves through our thinking down into vortexes of negativity, that higher self can be the observer and go, do you really want to go there? Kind of thing. And then the paranormal, without giving away the story, the main female character has kind of a unexpected paranormal experience. And then there's, as part of that, when she comes back to reality, something else happens, which involves those adamantine particles, and then so she's in Pagosa Springs, and then it sends her back to Pagosa Springs, and that's where she meets the male protagonist. Because part of the journey in school was that the genre that I had to pick was like mystery, romance, children's, poetry, and so there had to be an element of romance in there, and so there is a romantic connection. Some of the challenges that I faced, as many authors do, and maybe even people who started their writing journey or enhanced their writing journey with a degree, was that it was a 2-year program, and it took me 3 years because I added on 1 semester to change locations. I had to rewrite that, and then the other semester was because my mystery writer professors who were going to pass my novel as market ready both failed it, and I'd never received an F in all of my academic career. So, and I wasn't really ready to rewrite what they wanted me to change at that point. And that was a challenge because they kept challenging all the spiritual elements that I had in there as not being realistic or however they approach things from their mystery perspective, which are mostly like somebody killed someone and let's figure out who did it kind of thing. And that wasn't where I was going. And there is some reincarnation elements in the book, and they were not in belief of that as well. And so it was a bit of me having to stand up for myself and just say, I really can't change these elements because they're so much of what guide the characters and guide the story. And then the other challenge, as many authors experience, is then it's ready to be published and you send it to agents and you're rejected, or you send it to publishers and you're rejected. And then after so many, I tend to put my work on the shelf and move on to something else. And then I was reading a lot of my favorite authors write in first person. So the same experience might be written about in two different chapters because it's from one protagonist perspective and then another's. And I just felt so much more close to the inside of the character from a first person perspective. So then I decided to rewrite the entire novel in first person, and because it was written in third person. So that was challenging. But once it was finished, I was really, really happy, and I'm so glad that I did it. It was worth the time. And I think when you're passionate and you're working on passion projects, to have, obviously if you're in some setting where you have deadlines, you have to meet those. But at the same time, I trust that the timing's been perfect. And that's why I'm sitting here right now, because it was just meant to be and to happen this many years later. And it feels good that I didn't give up, that I persevered. And I've done that with almost all my projects, so. That would be, I would say, the foundation of everything I do, is inviting people to find their truth within and recognizing maybe the dysfunctional coping mechanisms that they develop to survive. We all have to survive our childhoods, even if they seemed great. I work with a lot of addiction and codependency, and one of the things about codependency is, will you love me if I do what you want me to do and be who you want me to be, which means you're losing your true self in order to be someone for someone else. And that usually breeds resentment, and it's not the other person making you make those choices. And that's what happens in the novel, is the female protagonist, Tara, is coming out of a dysfunctional relationship and going on a ski vacation to take a break and get away from everything. She's actually a speech pathologist. And so that, of course, is something what I knew to write about. And then the male protagonist that she ends up meeting when she returns to Pagosa's father has a stroke. And so I worked with stroke patients as a speech pathologist. And so I was able to write from experience about that. Tara is kind of a lost woman who, in the journey of this experience and the relationships that she has, the first relationship she has when she goes to Pagosa is with Alex. And then when she returns, she meets Xander. And it turns out that Xander is Alex's nephew. And she knows a lot more than he knows. And yet he is also trying to solve a family mystery that happened. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but he's a recovering alcoholic. And I actually am also in recovery, so I understand that journey of being an active addict or alcoholic and then being in recovery. And I don't go into that a lot, but just the fact that he talks a little bit about it. And then as what happens in romance is that boy meets girl, boy gets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. So following that format, that's what happens as well. And they both go to therapists. They both experience hypnotherapy. As I said, Tara experiences the mediumship, and there's a sibling relationship with Tara and some dysfunction with Xander and his father's relationship. And so because I work with that all the time, I tried to touch on those elements, and yet they all end up getting resolved. Many writers, I would think, follow a similar process, but I take the character and write about them depending on how far back I have to go of their life experience, and whether it's family of origin stuff and or job, whatever challenges they may have, and relationships, and sort of develop who they are as a person as up to where they start in the novel. And then from there, I just try to get to know them from that individual development. But then also, I think as I'm writing, and again, many authors probably would agree, that the characters speak to you and tell you who they are. And I might have an idea of how the journey's going to go in this next section of the book, but then the character literally takes me a different direction and I follow it because, and I don't know where that comes from. It feels like it's from that divine source in a way, that they take on a life of their own. I don't know if this is an emotion, but I hope inspiration. I hope they're inspired and maybe even questioning or curious about some new directions they may want to take or new avenues they may want to explore. Maybe some opening their mind to some areas where they're closed-minded and just energized or illuminated, or interesting, my company's energy illumination, which is what I think everything is energy. And even if it seems like there's nothing, it's in that space of nothingness is energy. And I hope it's an emotional ride for them, that there's sadness or there's maybe even frustration, irritation, anger, hurt, but then because they're just living what the characters are living. And then hopefully at the end, when all the relationships get resolved and the mystery solved, they're just inspired and enjoyed the journey.